Hey, what's going on, guys? How is it? Today, we are speaking about editing and revisions. It is a workshop for this week of the month. And as we always do, check ins. What have you been working on? What have you gotten done since the last month? Where are you at with things?
I'm editing. I'm trying to finish up the house that Jack built. It's so I've been sort of recording it as a final edit, which is quite the task because I record it and I'm like that I don't like that, so I'm stopping and changing. So it's in my mind, I somewhat hoped I was optimistic that I would be able to sort of go in and record and be able to use that as an audiobook and kind of like do a, two birds with one stone. But I'm recording a section and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to re-record that because I'm like, so it's going a little slower than I would have liked and have other distractions. And I'm trying to edit the fort. So I was working on that and sort of I found I needed a little restructuring. I've got a character who's going to play a much larger role in book 3, and I bring him in the fort, but I need to bring him in a little earlier. I'm trying to sort of move him in a little bit, and I've got him. I have to change a couple of the last chapters. So there's one chat, I mean, I realize this as a tight, this is normal, right? For like first drafts. I'm sure you all are like, oh, that's not quite what I want to do. So I've got to move him in sooner. And I've been sort of working on that. And then I've got to switch a chapter where he arrives sooner. And then, yeah, so I got to move him around. So, and I can do it. I can structurally see where to put him and where to have these things happen. But, it's a matter of just sitting down and doing it. My kid's taking off. He's going to school in a couple of weeks. So this is going to be a distraction. I got to make sure he's set because he's not just going to Tennessee right now. He's going to London. So
Wow.
what? Yeah, he's doing a semester
I just
abroad.
said, wow.
I know, right? So I'm probably going to get a little distracted. I'm hoping. I don't think I'm going to get. I'd like to think I could get the house that Jack built out before I leave. I'm going to take him to Nashville and make sure get him off to London from there because he's going with a group. But I'm hoping, but I'm not gonna I'm gonna not make that a hard deadline because I want to make sure this goes out right.
Yeah, I
You know?
feel like given the nature of how the last audiobook went, I would say just try and get your edits done before you go to Nashville and then worry about the proper recording, after you get back, Don't stress yourself out.
Yes, but I will say it's super helpful.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't say enough good things about, it's basically reading out loud, but it's when you're recording yourself, it even if I realize this is not going to be the audiobook. I mean, but because I'm going to have to redo it, but even when you're recording yourself and it adds an extra level to it
Mm-hmm.
because as you well know, I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but
Well, that's okay.
you get a much better understanding of how the everything's flowing. You hear it better because you're trying to perform it, so you see if it works or not on a different level. It really does make a difference. I can't say enough good things about doing this.
I am in full agreement with you. Jaji, do we have you back? What have you been working on? What have you finished or what's the state?
So the last week, since last time, the first thing I did was they worked on the male reader sale, and that
Yeah.
took a lot more time than I originally thought.
This is a monthly check-in. So what have you done in the last month since
Oh,
we
that's
did the
true.
check-in? Yeah.
Well, the sale took about, I think, like 2 weeks of my time.
Sure.
I really enjoyed doing it, and it was a lot of fun.
And you crushed it.
What's this?
You crushed it.
I was really hoping that we'd get one of these viral fights like John Douglas keeps getting into, and we didn't do that. But we did seem to reach a lot of people who were looking for this sort of thing. So that was really great. Apparently, everybody did, better than expected. So that was really nice. I was very pleased that worked out. I'd basically worked on it on and off for about 6 months. So when I finally got it to, come off, that was a lot of fun. The other thing is I'm now 6 chapters from the end of the book I'm writing. And after mulling over these chapters for a week or two, and they were kind of flat, I suddenly, I think on Sunday morning, or Saturday morning, I suddenly had this brilliant idea about how to reorganize them and add one more conflict so that there was now a progression of building problems related. Because I'm putting together scenes that took place in the role playing game. Some of them were after the end of the book, but I needed those events, so I moved them.
This is Regency
This is the
romance.
Regency fantasy romance.
Yeah. Just clarifying.
So I had scenes, yeah. So I have scenes where I needed certain things to be mentioned to the reader, but in the game they took place after the climax point. So I had to like reclimax them. I had to make them interesting again, So I've the last couple of days, that's a lot of what I've been doing is just rewriting those scenes so that now she gets yelled at by her friend, and her parents say, "We're going to go home. We're leaving London, so you can't see the guy that you're in love with anymore." Because she, of course, fell in love with one of the 2 guys her father said you can't marry.
Of course. Forbidden love.
And which I should say, I am not responsible in either of these books for who the characters fell in love with. It was entirely the players doing, okay? But they fell in love with one player fell in love with the guy that the father had said no about, and the other player fell in love with her married cousin, which I swear is the last person I would have picked. But they both work out really well by the end. I did have to kill off the wife in the second book in order but it's just one of these things. So, and I really like that book because the girl is really virtuous about it. I mean, she doesn't attempt to get involved with the married guy, but eventually she does get to end up with him. So it worked out nicely.
Funny how it all worked out.
It all worked out for everybody except the wife.
Nice. Yeah, which is really sad. And she was a character that the other player really liked. But, it's one of those things.
Well, I'm trying to steer away from some stuff. Gonzalo, we haven't seen you in a while, man. Come on up. Come and hang out and chat if you can. We're still doing some check-ins before we get into the meat and potatoes of the workshop today, editing and revisions. JF, you're up on stage. Give us a report. What have you completed? What have you made progress on since last month? We always do the check-ins. How has it gone for you?
You're talking to me? I thought you were talking to Gonzalo.
No, I'm talking to you now. I can talk to multiple people.
So I was just in Maine for vacation for the last week and
beautiful.
a half.
What part of Maine?
Southern Maine, so like the Lakes region.
Okay. Yeah.
Because my mother-in-law has property up there,
nice.
Which is on a lake, which is really
Kenny
nice.
Bunkport.
So we took the kids up there.
That's what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. Could not have been more gorgeous weather. We were really, really lucky this year. Low humidity, nice cool nights, warm days, sunny pretty much the entire time we were there. It was great. However, there were times when I found myself in the house by myself and I did a fair amount of writing. So there was this one place in the book I'm working on where I was really stuck. It's like, okay, where do I go from here? And it was one of those things where it was like I just decided to just soldier through. I looked at the historical background on Vlad and what was going on in this particular part of his life, and it was one of those things where it's like I can't get too deep in the weeds with this because I'm afraid that it's like I'm not writing a history. I'm writing a novel based on people who actually lived, and with some other stuff thrown in, which did not happen. And excuse me, I was really wondering where to go from there. And then I did read a little bit into the history, and I was like, oh, well, I can go this angle. And then I was able to go to that angle, and that got me kind of over the hump. And then I wrote some more, and now I feel like I'm back to the place that I have where I've mapped out the rest of it, and I finally got to that place where I can now continue. So that was kind of a nice breakthrough. I'm about 20K in.
Okay. What's your goal?
Probably more like 50.
Okay.
So I'm just a little under halfway there.
Yeah. Doing well.
Mhm.
We'll look forward to the next update in
Yeah.
September. Here's what we really want to know, though, in regards to your trip to Maine. And that would be, did you eat the blueberry ice cream? Did you have a lobster roll?
I had several lobster rolls. Um, I I did not have blueberry ice cream. However, we did have blueberries that were picked earlier in the week
All right.
that I turned into blueberry pancakes. So yes, we did have something blueberry up there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Gonzalo, we haven't heard from you and we haven't seen you in a while. Absolute ghost. Welcome back. Glad to have you here. Give us a check-in, report on your progress. Tell us what you've been working on. How are you? Hello. Good morning.
Hey man, hey guy. Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome. I've had my head down for a while, uh, like up to July. It's been basically a mix of work, just really catching up with work, like IRL work, and writing. Honestly, like up to like June, it's been more plotting than writing, but I still consider it writing, right? World building and making sure all the beats are in place and where they should be. Um, and then in July, we went on break, and like the last few days, like the last week of July up until basically yesterday, today, I've been on break from work. Like my students have been on break now, and I've taken that opportunity to just sit down and like I literally made a day by day plan to be like, okay, a page of chapter 2, a page of the kill box, a page of chapter 2, a page of the kill box. Like one day to like work on some art, and I've been doing that like crossing them off day by day. I've only fallen behind as far as like 2 days being able to do that, and I've been really happy with the results. I've actually finished drafting my short story, The Kill Box, which is set in Salvador's world, but has nothing to do with Salvador itself. It's like a kind of like a prequel story, and I'm really happy with it. I just have to start editing now, so it's really serendipitous that you guys are doing a workshop on editing, because I finished, like I wrote the last sentence yesterday on the story. I was like, all right, crack my knuckles. Now it's time to start editing. Right?
Nice. Well, we plan this around your work.
Yeah, of course.
Kid, but yeah, happy to hear it. And as I said in the chat, if there's some time and you want to add me to like a Google Doc or a Dropbox paper doc or something like that, would be happy to alpha beta read it for you, whenever.
Yeah, cool. I'll consider that. Right now, I wanna do like a full read, like myself. I want to do a full read from beginning to end. Make sure that there's, just do a vibe check first. And I'm gonna start noticing little things. I'm gonna start repeating. I'm gonna start noticing things like repeated words and things that don't make sense. Like, oh wait, I forgot that. I did realize when I finished writing that I still need to insert higher stakes, like why he needs to win so bad. I was really focused on the progression of the event. So that it still needs a little tweaking, obviously. But I'm really happy with the climax, like how it turned out. Like the moment that I imagined when I started writing the story, I think came out really, really nicely. That's that little page that I sent to the group chat, and I was really happy with that. So I've been making a lot of progress in my writing world. I'm really happy. Glad to be back.
Yeah, welcome back. Ladies, let us discuss the topic for today, editing and revisions, really getting into the nuts and bolts here. We'll start right at the beginning. We've got notes, we've done a little planning. Maybe the first place to think about editing and revisions is to understand the significance, understand your writing style and your goals, genres even. I would assume, as both of you have editorial experience, and all of us do here in some regard or another, you've got perspective on style and how editing applies differently to styles or applications and genres broadly.
I think I would just start by saying that we use the word editing, but we actually mean a couple of different discrete things. Not that they can't be done together, but they can be, they're different activities, so we can talk about them a little differently. One is just spelling and grammar. You left out a word. One mistake I often make when I'm writing is that I write a sentence and then I decide to change part of the sentence and I forget that I've changed from walking to walk or from swim to swimming. I little things like that I often get wrong because I altered something and I didn't read the whole sentence through. So spelling, punctuation, basic clear errors where you wrote the wrong word or you accidentally left a word out. That's I'll call it the first type of editing. And that kind, a lot of people do eventually try to get someone else to do also, just because your eye tends to miss it. But then the second type of editing would be clarity and grace. You're rereading not for the story so much as the actual writing. You're trying to make sure the writing sounds good. Oh, that was really clunky. Oh, I just used the word 5 twice in a row. I think I don't want to do that. I remember I once had a scene where I had used the word duck like 6 times in the same paragraph. You don't want that. It's annoying for the reader.
Goose.
Exactly. I mean, there's lots of things you can do. The bird. I mean, I rewrote it, so I know you can do a lot of things, but you have to be aware of it. When you're writing, sometimes you're not aware of it. You just particularly write it, you come back, you go get a cup of coffee, you come back, you could pick it up, you don't reread the first part of the paragraph, things like that. So there's a type of reading where you're editing, where you're going through and you're trying to make each sentence and paragraph sound good. And then the third kind is the story itself. Am I bringing my like what Heidi said earlier? Am I bringing my character in early enough? Am I bringing my character in too early? Is there a theme? Is there a theme or an idea or something I referred to earlier in this chapter or earlier in this book that I can bring up again so that I'm not dropping threads? Is the climax exciting enough? Am I putting enough of the internal thinking of the character on stage so that the reader knows what's going on? Sometimes I go back and I realize that I just left that out and have to put it in. So I think editing falls into kind of those 3 categories: the perfectly technical side, the poetic, versus clunky side, and then the actual story.
Fair, reasonable, accurate. Heidi, thoughts. You edited a periodical. So I feel like there's some maybe nonfiction side of things that
in terms of editing
might correlate. Yeah.
Well, I will say this. One thing I learned editing, we had a group of columnists that we edited monthly. It was a monthly periodical, back when these things were still done. And one thing I will say is we had a group of columnists that we edited monthly, which I already said, so I'll say it twice, evidently. And you began to realize that each writer had a set of errors they made on a regular basis. So it's usually like 3 or 4 things that they always did. Like, one of them always put then instead of than. That was one. I'm trying to remember. It's been a while. Another one was king of what is called the passive voice. And that's because he was a tech guy and he wrote scientific, his main writing was from science. So, I mean, it would in scientific writing, you're supposed to use the passive voice. I'm not really sure why, but they have maybe somebody else here knows. I've never really thought about an explanation for that, but that's why he did it. So, I mean, things like that. There was always like 3 or 4 mistakes. Somebody was like, I don't know, always had comma splices. So the thing I realized is that in general, writers and people in general have a set of grammatical errors that is unique to them. And the best thing you can do with editing is figure out what your set of grammatical errors is. I mean, and this is just a tool thing. This is not a stylistic thing. I mean, well, it sort of is, but to put it simply. So if you know the mistakes you're going to make you're going to make them when you're doing your first draft writing. I mean, maybe you're aware of them and you can pull back from it a little bit, but for the most part, you're going to make them. They're going to be there. So that's the first things you should look for is that set of mistakes. And it's usually just 3 or 4 things. So it's that you consistently do wrong. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're editing, just as a nuts and bolts sort of thing, because it will just help you going forward to kind of clean that out in your writing. So that's the most valuable lesson I learned from being an editor, periodical editor, especially because I would consistently see the same mistakes from each writer. So I don't know if that's been.
I
Yeah.
think that's very wise.
And those are things I think that we should all be mindful about in regards to our writing. The things that both of you said, but particularly the habitual sort of mistakes that we make, finding those patterns and then trying to eliminate them so we can make other mistakes habitually in the future. I think
Yeah, you will.
Heidi, you had brought up draft states in regards to work you're doing with the house that Jack built and the audiobook read, and perhaps even just reading aloud as a performative function akin to editing. And I would say this is a great vehicle for rehearsal of an audiobook, but also
Yes.
digging up little bits of stuff maybe you're too close to in the work. And it's certainly not a first draft. I've read it, and it's apparently not the final draft, right? But give us something about the revision process.
Well, I would say 2 things. One, yeah, for the audiobook, it's actually a way to practice your performance, and I think that's the better way to look at it, because you're practicing the performance and you're listening for sentences that are clunky or awkward that that make sound great in your head, but when you're reading them aloud, they're just not. You're like, oh, that's a little stiff. The other thing I catch like crazy for me, and this is one thing you brought up, Jaji, is word repetition, right? I catch a lot of I mean, I hunt for it right now, but because I don't know if I think that's a common thing. I don't think that's necessarily a unique thing. It's like you get into your head and you're writing and you didn't realize this, you walk away and you come back and you didn't realize a sentence before you use the exact same word. So,
So common.
oh yeah. So, yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is that's one of the things about reading aloud. You will catch all the word repetition because you hear yourself saying it over and over again. You're like, oh shoot, I gotta fix that. Um, I catch awkward sentences. I catch gerunds. I mean, what was driving me crazy? I was doing one section of the novella, and for some reason, and I know better. I don't like them. But I had all these gerunds in there, and it was just pissing me off. So I kind of had to stop recording and sit down and take them out. And I don't think I would have caught that if I wasn't reading it aloud into the microphone. I just think we could have a discussion about, I mean, yeah, I'm up for having a discussion about using gerunds in literature, but I think they have a small place, but they don't have a major place, and I don't know how they all slipped in on me. Yes, these are things I think about. But I mean, does that sort of answer what you were poking at, Michael?
Yeah, to a degree. There's always more to say. I think
Sure.
You have a very iterative process. You're happy to make a lot of drafts and will
Sort. Yeah, but I have to.
and keep
Sorry.
hammering on the thing. That's okay. That's just the nature of the way that you work. Jaji, how do you go about it in terms of working through a draft? How close is maybe the first draft to a final draft, or how much does the final draft resemble your outline if you use that? Anything along those lines?
Just yesterday, I was visiting with a very old friend who likes to tell people I've known him since before he was born, because I was 7 when he was born. And I was explaining to him about my book, and he was interested in reading it. And I have this one really bad habit that, I finish it and then I finish it again. And so I'm like, well, I can send it to you when I'm done, but I'll probably later versions over and over again, which is my editor crazy. But so now my finished things don't look very much like my first thing at all. I think I've mentioned at other spaces, I write what I think of as like the projectors that we used to use, the overhead projectors we used to use long ago in elementary school, where you'd put down, like, you'd have a map of the school, and then all the outside buildings would be in blue and the inside ones would be in red, and then the certain places you weren't supposed to go would be in green or whatever. Those colors should be reversed, but you know what I mean. And you'd lay down one at a time and you'd end up with a finished picture, but it would be different transparencies that were being shot up on a screen one at a time. And that's kind of how I do a original, and then I go through and I try to add thoughts and emotions. And then I go back and I do things like edit just for getting hair right because I forget to mention it. Or I have all my fantasy books have what I call familiar edit, where I'm like, wait, doesn't that person have a pet? Have I mentioned the pet? I have to put the pets back on stage. So I go through, not the ones that have a plot function, but the ones that are just background, that in fact there are other pets in the environment. They have to be mentioned, otherwise they don't exist, So I do it in waves like that. So that the main editing thing for me is to spend time thinking about and I do this when I'm editing a work too. I read the thing or I write it, and then I take a day or two, and then I start thinking about it. And my favorite way of doing this is to go roller skating, which I haven't done last, but I used to do it because it's something about being in a regular way where you're moving a bit and your body's doing something, but there's not that much thinking you have to do. I mean, you don't want to run someone over, but other than that, and just have a chance to just regularly think. There's music playing, and I go over the beginning and the end and every aspect and the themes. I'm like, okay, this character, is there something this character's doing or isn't doing that can bring out more about his personality? And I try to do that for each aspect of the story. So that's my editing process. I also completely agree with you guys that reading out loud is great. And one of the most painful things in the world is listening to your narrator read a book that's pretty polished and seeing what mistakes you made. And you're like, I can't, it's too late. But that's why it's good to try to read it aloud yourself while you can still fix things.
Are you intending to narrate your books at any point?
No, I do not read out loud very well. I wish I did, but I make a lot of mistakes. It would be a very, very long.
Okay, well, that we all do that. That's literally the
No,
thing.
I mean, it's like a little worse than normal. I was reader at church one time, and I got a lot of complaints. I just read the wrong word.
Ooh.
And it's not intentional. Like I the right word. I just say the wrong word. I don't know what it is. It's been, it's the lifelong thing. But
Oh.
I have a narrator. Her name is Shayna Bucks. She's the one who came up with the idea of putting my books on audiobook and talked me into it. And we just use ACX, and she gets half and I get half. And she does a lovely, lovely job. She recently redid my entire first book because she had done it when her equipment wasn't as good, and there were complaints about the audio quality, and she did the whole thing over again. And now we're working on book 6, which is like 500, 600 page book. So
nice.
It's many, many, many hours. But she does it, and then I have to sit down and read it and listen. And it's weird how hard that is.
Yeah.
Because listening to something we're used to doing, I can listen to something and play like a light little game on my computer, and I have no trouble. Reading we're used to doing. And you can read and have music playing in the background or something, you know what I mean? But reading and listening the same thing where you want to see, because you'll accidentally leave out a word occasionally, or, and I have to catch it. It's really difficult. I have a lot of trouble getting myself to sit down and focus on that. Once I do, it's fine, but I'm often surprised at how hard I find that. It doesn't seem like it really should be that hard.
Here's an interesting one. I've been listening to No Country for Old Men, the Cormac McCarthy book, narrated by Tom Steckschulte. I have found 2 errors in it, interesting ones. Only 2, and that's not the end of the world. It's not a long book. It's only 8 hours, but they were such glaring instances of error. I'm not reading the book while I'm listening to this. I'm just listening to this. That I went back and listened back to it to be like, is that an error? Could that error have been made here? And it was, it happens. The stuff slips through, it gets through. For the guys that are on stage, thoughts on editing, how you go about it, your process, your revisions, anything that you'd like to kick into the conversation?
I do a lot of the same the stuff that you guys have been talking about. Honestly, I read it to myself. I try to narrate it to myself the way Heidi describes, just that I'm not recording it. Like I'll read it like I'm doing a dramatic reading or something. And as I go, I start noticing things and start noticing things. Like I'll realize I used the word twice, or that it sounds weird, or whatever. I do try to do a pass of like thinking, okay, like, do I have everything set? But because I'm such a plotter, proudly, I usually get that part of the editing in before I start writing any actual text, right? I'll put in whatever, like whether it's sticky notes or bullet points. I usually get most of that stuff in before I write. And so then usually my editing process is basically reading it and then like doing a pass of like fixes. I don't usually have that many spelling errors because I'm a grammar Nazi, not so proudly. and like any typos, like sometimes there'll be a typo. I usually catch it as I'm typing, but it's inevitable. But usually it's more about like repeating words, redundancies, or something doesn't sound quite right, or I figure out a way to express something a little bit better, a little more intensely, or whatever that is. I'll go through it 2 or 3 times, and then I'll wait. that's something I haven't heard mentioned here. Like I'll wait maybe like a day or two, or sometimes with my book last year, it was like sometimes it would be like a couple of weeks, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. And I think that's really helpful to come back with it with fresh eyes. So like I might edit this a little bit today and then like leave it for a day or two and then come back to it, because that helps a lot more than people think, I think.
I would champion that. Let it rest and go back and look. You catch so much more. Yeah, that's a huge thing. You're right, Gonzo, to bring that up. Absolutely. That makes a world of difference if you give it a little time and then come back to it.
JF, you dropped down, you came back. Do you have thoughts on editing and revision in this early state of a work?
Sorry, I've been having connection issues today,
Oh, it
so
happens.
I keep dropping in and out. And but yeah, to all your points, yeah, everything that's been said so far has been good, and or are things that I do. Like I do read it out loud. One of the things that I have been doing with my Vlad book is there is a space that I belong to. So anyway, what I was saying was everything that's been said here are things that I've done. I've read stuff out loud to listen to it. I belong to a space where I read. We read our WIPs out loud, and that has been really helpful because then I do hear the mistakes where it's like, okay, that sounds really clumsy, and I'll go in and fix it. Um, Kind of giving it time to breathe. What Gonzalo was saying, that has definitely helped because what I've been doing is I've been adding on like chapter by chapter to the book that I'm writing, and then I'll go back. Sometimes I go back to the beginning and I'll read it all the way through just to make sure that like there's the continuity still works, and then I'll go in and like finesse things. I know that like this is like one of the big uh no-nos that they tell you about with editing, which is they say, please don't edit while you're writing, because but the kind of writing that I do is really for like grammar and flow and continuity. Like one thing I did, one of my chapters, which actually inspired the whole Vlad book, started as a short story. And I got to that point in the book where it's like, okay, here's this chapter. And I had to change the beginning just so that the beginning part of the novel would flow into the what started as a short story, and then I could go forward. Like that was the only really hard editing I've done so far. The rest has been just finessing the text. I I try really really hard to not edit while I'm writing because I'm afraid that I'll lose the thread and then I'll have to go back and it's like, oh wait, this doesn't make sense now, and then I have to edit again, and so I'm just, like I said, I just do mainly the run through grammatical stuff, kind of wording and flow, and then just once I get to the end, I'll do my hard edit.
I'm fine with editing while you're writing, but also I'm not writing incredibly long stuff. So it probably is slightly a different concern. And I'm very, I don't know, shotgun style about writing. Um, where in early drafts, I'm just trying to get little bits of stuff all over. And then I'm being a little bit more incisive and focused on passages or the points I'm trying to make. I'm in the middle of that with a piece I'm trying to wrap up for release next month. I was going to say before that Jaji was talking really early on in the space about different styles of editing. And I think in terms of like maybe something that should be done early on, but is also, in my opinion, an advanced editing technique is developmental editing, right? And being concerned with I don't know, multiple arcs or how the entire plot flow is going and thinking about that in a really detailed and nuanced way that allows writers to focus on showing and not telling. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Correct.
What was that?
I was agreeing with you.
Oh,
It's kind of sad that when we agree with each other, we don't have that much to say.
well, I was agreeing with you earlier with what you were talking about.
That's true. That's true. I also, by the way, agree with the idea that I wouldn't worry about editing as you go. I do everything by chapter, and so I write a chapter and I edit it quite a bit before I go on to the next one. That doesn't mean I don't also edit the whole thing, but my mind works better that way. It just, I think each of us goes about these things. I think when people warn things like that, what they're really trying to say is the same thing we say when we say don't let yourself get pulled too much into research. They're trying to say don't develop a habit that keeps you from moving forward. But if editing as you go helps you move forward, then there's no harm,
Yeah, I would add that I'll layer my work on a chapter, say. So, I mean, I just view most of this stuff as guidelines at this point. I mean, you can't just follow every single rule, and because most of these rules are really just saying don't write badly. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. And I mean, it's just you can do anything if you do it well. Oh, we lost Jeff. But what I was gonna say in regards to that is I'll layer it. It's kind of like doing a sculpture. It's like or a drawing or a painting, right? You start out with a drawing and you go back, and I might work on a chapter 2 or 3 times, and then before I go on to the next one. So I'm sort of writing slash editing it. It depends. It just depends on what's going on in that chapter. Uh, I'm a little more it just depends on where I'm at with the story, if I'm still trying to develop the ideas, but, I mean, you kind of layer it up. I mean, I think that's what you're doing with editing, you're sort of cleaning out waste, and, the other thing I'll do is sometimes I'll write around an idea, like, 3 or 4 times, so it's like there'll be in a first draft chapter, there'll be a lot of repetition because I'm saying the same thing in 3 or 4 different ways, maybe not that many, like, say, 2 different ways. And so I need to condense that down to how one way of, I only need to say one thing once. I don't need to say it 2 times or 3 times. So that's another thing that happens. And sometimes I go back and work on the chapter, and sometimes I keep moving forward and deal with it later. I mean, it's really just a matter, and I think, Judge, you nailed it. It's a matter of maintaining um, momentum. I think that's really all that statement's about is just you don't want to lose momentum. But some chapters just demand a tremendous amount of work. They're just, to get them just right. And so you spend and I always find that it's usually one of the opening chapters to a book. Like I have like chapter 2 in the fort that I'm working on. That thing has taken I have been through that chapter a gazillion times, and I guess, you know, I'm kind of seeking perfection. I mean, I know I'm not going to achieve it. I'm not completely insane. I'm only partially insane. I just sort of chase after it. But that chapter took me, I don't know how many times I've been through that thing because, and it's like, yeah, it slowed me down editing the rest of the book, but it had to be right. Because it was this jumping off point for everything else. So sometimes you have to get stuck a little bit too. I mean, you just have to, you have to understand you don't want to get stuck, but then understand that sometimes you're going to. I mean, this is just it. Um, it's just guidelines, just don't write badly. That's really the only rule. I mean, right?
Yeah, good one.
It's both don't write badly and also don't develop something that keeps you from writing. So you don't write because you're researching or you're editing or something
Well,
like that.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, and that's.
You made another comment I was going to comment off of, and now I've forgotten. I'll come back on what I think.
I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, it's like, yeah, you don't. Sometimes you're doing something so that you don't have to do the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Oh, I remember. So when you're talking about polishing, one thing I find is I have to have enough of the chapter done that I know the parts of it that I need to jump off next. So, in other words, as I say, I often do the characters' reactions last just because that's harder for me. And there was a time when I did I'd write the basics and then I'd do descriptions. I used to do it all in many layers, and now I've gotten a little better because I've done it for so long. So I have less things that I have to do the second time. But if I don't get the characters' reactions right, then in the next scene, I don't know the nice little nuances to put in to kind of build on what I've already done. So if she's really, mad at the guy who just criticized her, I need her to be remembering that in the next scene. So I think that one reason why we sometimes will write one scene over and over again until we get it right is not that we're wasting our time, but that we haven't gotten the part we need to jump off from. We ourselves need to know the specific words that are going to be there for whatever we need to do next. And that's not true of every scene, but there are scenes like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is off topic, so and
Maybe.
I know Michael will steer me up right back on, but Jaji, I know you're working on a romance right now. And I saw your Substack where you posted that video. I can't of talking about women's literature and smut.
That was such an eye opener to me. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was huge. And because I know you're working on a romance, and I'm now thinking about this quite seriously, and I'm wondering, how are you handling that? How are you handling, not putting
My
smut in it?
my particular romance only had kissing anyway.
Fair.
So it's not an issue. The second book in the series, I don't know how to describe it. It has steamy scenes that don't have sex, and then at the very end, it has one encounter between the married couple, which will not include much graphic description of any kind. Which I don't know if it's going to be even steamy. So I'm just trying to take a really light touch anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. But I am thinking about it a lot because there are things in one book or another that I could tone up or tone down. It was such a shock to me because I just did this whole male reader thing, and everybody's talking about all these books are for women, or the men are being. No, it wasn't about books for women at all. They're all erotica. And of course, erotica is addictive. Once you get into it and you're getting kind of a kick, then you want more and more, and you start needing something that's more hardcore, which is what she was talking about in the video. And it kind of completely changed my view of where the market is and what it is we're struggling against.
Yeah, and that was one element of it as well. Obviously he goes, and I mean, the thing that was interesting to me is in my editing process right now, I'm trying to keep Michael from shutting me down.
Okay.
Bring it back to editing.
I have like chapter 3 in the fort is basically it's a sex scene, but it's not a sex scene, but it is. Do you know what I mean? So this is
I
the
do. I have things like that in my next book.
so this is the thing. So when you're writing something like that, it's never about the actual physical sex. It's about something else. Those are the best scenes.
Right.
And,
Right.
and this is the thing that's happening with erotica is they're removing that element.
Right.
I
Right.
think.
And I think she made a point in the video where she kept saying, "I'm not saying sex in books are bad. I'm saying that the way they're doing this is downplaying the story and upplaying the sex." So, I mean, that's what I would say. So, if I was talking to 3 different people, one had no sex and one had a lot, and one was in the middle, I would say, both that emphasize the story and I've noticed through the years, maybe it's just me, but I've noticed I get really bored in either a fight scene or a sex scene if that's all that's going on. I want some kind of plot develop. Even a short fight scene, this doesn't count. But a long fight scene, you want the character to be trying to accomplish something or do, you know what I mean? It's not just he punched, he, shoved. After a while, to me, that gets a little boring.
You want to be emotionally titillated, is what I'm hearing. So,
It's not
or just I want to be
titillation.
trying to figure something out. Is he going to be able to get all the way across the bar to where the girl is? You see what I mean? I want some motion to what's going on. It doesn't have to be the emotional titillating. My favorite sex scene is the one in the first Outlander book. I realize having a favorite sex scene might be odd, but it stood out to me because
the wedding scene,
right after she gets married, because they're getting to know each other. They're learning new things about each other in that scene. So it's not just this body part rubbed on that body part. It's if you skip that scene, you would miss something significant about the characters, So to me, that's a better scene,
Yeah, she walks the line with it because her sex scenes aren't always about sex. And that's the trick. I mean, the trick. I think that's the thing when you're writing that stuff is, and this is where where you get bored when it's just about titillation. It's ridiculous because, and Diana Gabaldon does about the best job, but even I started getting bored with the Outlander series. I just got tired. What?
I only read the first book, so I don't have that one to refer to. But
that's probably the best one.
I love romances, but many years ago, I started skipping the sex scenes and looking for the places where they argue.
That makes 50 Shades a very short book.
I didn't
bring it home a little bit to editing and thinking about the totality of a vision, the totality of image, being consistent, not only in terms of editorial, but packaging, design, graphics,
can I say
typesetting and font. Does it have to do with totality of vision or totality of image?
It does have to do with totality of vision.
All right.
And I think that it has to do, and I mean, I know we're talking very specifically, but this is a conversation I wanted to have with Jaji once I saw her Substack. But my reason for bringing it up also is when you're editing, even these scenes that may appear explicit, and this goes for anything, you really have to be thinking about what it is actually about. And when you go back to edit, that's when you can really focus on it. And I think that's an important point to make. And I think that ties this particular discussion in, because if you're going to write something that may be controversial, for lack of a better term, although I don't think any of it's controversial anymore, you have to have reasons as to why you're doing it.
Sure.
So I will say that. Now we may move on.
Thank
I think
you.
That's the important part.
That is the important part, is the moving on.
Thinking that, but doing it from the editing point of view specifically. It's one of the things to look for as you go back through your story, not just the sex, but, whether it's any kind of scene. Is my scene also providing a second thing going on in my fight or my sex scene, or even just my description or whatever it is? Am I drawing out what's going to keep the interest in this? Am I allowing some kind of plot motion? That kind of thing is a good thing to be thinking about for a number of different kinds of scenes.
Nuance and multi-layered intent. Yeah, I agree with that. Back on to a different portion of editing when we're thinking about our vision. When we're thinking about how people perceive the work, maybe in a tactile sense, or just experientially, choosing a font that makes it easy to read. This is something that we also explore kind of regularly in a group chat, is cover design, and having fonts. I know Heidi is big on kerning. It matters, in terms
I'm big on kerning.
Yeah, it's something that you always regularly bring up in regards to cover design and words and letters and
Oh,
typesetting and font.
okay.
You do. You have.
I
And
have brought it up.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe
multiple times.
you're right. I
You
guess I
know?
didn't really
Yeah.
think of it
Well,
in
I
those
thought
terms.
about it in those terms.
Okay.
Maybe go on a little bit about that for us.
Well, I mean, this is just visuals. I mean, it has to look right. I mean, that's really all it is. It's like, well, there was that cover. It would be better if we had a visual, but I don't think you can share it. That cover that someone's working on. Basically, the title of the letters was spaced out. Think of it. Let's say it's okay. So I'll use this example. So I don't know if y'all know a band called The Damned. Um, there's a reason I'm bringing this up. So
I would say the example is the old Metallica font where the M is big and the A is big.
well, I have a specific reason for this.
Okay.
So Dave Vanian is the name of the singer. So I ran into him once in at the anyway. The point is, I got his autograph. I was like 20 years old. Your autograph. So now, if you know anything about the Damned, Dave Vanian always pretended he was a vampire. So when he signed his autograph, it was Dave, and the D went down like a fang, and then it went across, and then the N at the end went down like another fang. So it was like his autograph was a teeth with fangs because he was a vampire. Get it? This is why I bring this up. Now, it was a brilliant autograph, because he had, all of his letters spaced all tight, and it looked like a mouth, and it looked like fangs. It was obvious what he was doing, and it was fun, right? I'm like, oh, that's great. And he's like laughing, and it was funny. But it was also ideal marketing because it portrayed him in the way he wished to be portrayed, and it was this perfect sort of kerning situation where he used the letters to express a quality of himself and the story he was telling. So that's why I specifically bring that one up. It would take me 20 years. I might even still have the blasted thing somewhere. But so this is why you need to look at that when you're putting words on a cover. It needs to do that. It needs to do what he did with his autograph. It needs to have that sort of expression that you're pushing forward. So in terms of kerning, and this feeds to an example Michael showed me of a cover that was attempting to do something similar with the first letter and the last letter, kind of making a little, we'll say I don't know what it was trying to do, but the letters in between were too spread out. It was like there were too many spaces between the teeth.
What do they call those drop caps? What is that called when the first letter of a paragraph is big?
Drop caps, yeah.
Okay. I can't believe I remembered that.
If you used them, so usually drop caps are used in text. Like the first letter of a paragraph. I mean, of an opening chapter, like the first letter of the first paragraph in the opening chapter, you start with a drop cap. Typically, I don't know how into layout you all want to get, but
Enough.
usually it's about 3 lines down, but I'll leave it at that. But I mean, visually, the words are probably even more important than the image on a cover of a I mean, the image has to play into the words, but it has to be,
I would say they're equally important.
well, yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, I can't argue that. They're important, but the words, I think people, they get tied into, but simplicity is really key. You can't have an overbusy image. You can't have overbusy words. It has to be balanced. It has to be clean. Gonzalo, you're a visual guy. You do really well with your images, because I mean, it's a very active image, but it's clean. So, these are things I would just say in regards to that, and it's all about communicating intent. And I know, Jaji, you wrote a whole thing on this with covers.
Yeah, yeah. You want it to be clear. As I said before, I got explained by my cover artist who used to draw for Marvel and DC. You can look him up, and his name is Dan Wallace. If you Google him, you can find Wolverine and Superman and stuff he's done. And of course, so he knew something about how the presentation, and his comment was that you want the picture and the letters to look like they were designed and meant to go together. So it's not that you can't have any aspect of the picture under the letters, but it needs to be a perfect example. Is somebody had a cover up a while ago that had lines of the slats of a barn, and if you put the letters along the slats, it just looked better to the eye than if it was kind of haphazardly over the lines between them, things like that. And it's just a little bit of looking at the image and matching it so that it looks like it was intended, and not having the letters overlap each other in a way that looks like it's accidental. Just little things like that, so that it looks to the eye as if the words and the picture are intended to be together. And I thought that one piece of advice he gave me was just brilliant, and it's been helpful. And I've been able to share it with others who found it helpful too over the years.
Yeah, I'm into it. Gonzalo, I wish we had you still on stage, because we're actually going to talk a little bit more about graphics and pictorial elements inside of our work. And for me, that's something that has been vital. And additionally, I've been really bad at it. The stuff is in there, but it's not, I wouldn't say I was good at layout really at all in the first couple of books. They should actually probably be redone for layout concerns. Oh, hey, we got him back. That said, the paperback I'm working on for release in November, that is actually on my screen even now while we're hanging out, and I've been making some progress on. I don't think I'm good at layout in general, particularly dealing with all of these graphical elements. But there, I would say, is a considerable improvement over the years. At least there's some improvement. There's other things I want to do in the future that will require more improvement on this front, and I think that it helps to practice at it. And it's like anything. It's just like writing, except here we focus so much more on writing that some of these other design things don't necessarily come up to the forefront as much. Gonzalo, you came back up. What do you think about graphics and pictorial elements in regards to layout or design?
When I was when I was writing not writing, really, like presenting again, like getting ready to present again the proposal initially for Salvador, I had a 1-page description of what issue 1 was going to be about, and like how the story was going to kick off and all that stuff. But I wanted to make it more visually appealing, right? And I had been working on a bunch of sketches for the last few years now. And I had one of, it was just at pencil stage. It was like a pencil sketch of Salvador, like a little while before he comes online. He's still in the lab. He's up on like hung up on some wires, lots of panels open. I just wanted to I was just playing around with the design, how he'd look. And to get that kind of, his name is Salvador. He's the savior. He's gonna basically save the world at the end. So I hope I'm not without trying to be offensive about it. I was actually trying to create an imagery of like the world's saviors. So I put him up on wires, but with his arms stretched out to the sides, and I was just to see how that would look, and it looked pretty cool. And with like wires coming out of his arms, and like the panels on his chest open, and like the core inside and all that stuff. And when I was getting that text ready to present, I thought, it'd be really cool to show something with this and not just a bunch of text. So what I did was I cropped just part of that image, like halfway down his face and down to I guess about the midsection, and one of the arms sticking out to the side. So the body on the right and his right arm sticking out towards the left on the paper. And I put the text, but just below, so that'd be first the head, and then the arms stretches out into the paper, and then the rest of it. So I had space there to write that text. I was trying to find it on my Google Drive because I couldn't find it in my folder. So that the text starts with one short paragraph above the arm, but next to the head with his look, right? And then it continues below the arm. So it kind of the text would stop right around the contour of the arm, and then the rest of the image, the robot parts, the open panel, so that it follows that contour. And it looked pretty cool, and it looked intentional, and it also added to the story where you could actually see what was going on, where he was and how his existence began, how he started. So I guess I tell that story to that's basically as far as I've taken, kind of using images in the writing itself. Without going into comic books, of course, right? An actual, actually using images in the text. And I thought it worked really well because the arm and the torso framed the text really nicely. And the area above the arm framed the introduction with the head really nicely too. It played really well into what I was doing there. And I think that if you're considering using images for your text, one should complement the other, right? The text should complement the image, and the image should not only draw you in, but also complement the text, what's going on in the story. Oh yeah, that has a lot to do with what I'm seeing visually on the page, right?
Gonzalo, totally agree with your points. I feel like all of that contextualizes against the design aspects, the totality of image and vision and all the rest. I like all that stuff. And particularly, I wanted to be able to tee you up on that because you're doing multimedia type of stuff where you're writing it as a novel, but then you're also considering it, that same story, to become a graphic novel, and having to think through some of those processes, I think requires additional levels of consideration that perhaps all of us are not engaged in the same way.
Well, and it's funny because it actually started out as I found it. It actually started out as a manga. I've always wanted to make it either a comic book or a manga. I settled on manga a couple years ago, and only this year I started thinking, well, this is taking a really long time to make possible, right? To make happen. So I just realized it's nothing stopping me from just sitting down and typing on a computer. So I said, screw it. I'm going to start writing it that way. Here, I found the text. I'm going to see if I can get an image capture, a screenshot, and show you what I mean. The arm doesn't stretch out as far as I remembered. And I do have on the bottom, another image of him, another sketch of him, on the left side. So it reads a little bit like a magazine layout, but the text does an S shape, it goes from the top all the way across, and then only to the left, and then only to the right, which looks it's visually appealing.
Well, we will see it as soon as you put it in the comments.
Yeah, let me put it in the comments. Give me a sec.
Yeah, for sure. While we are here talking about these digital things, let's move into tools of the trade, software and resources for effective editing. There are some things that Jaji and I like. There's some things that Heidi likes. There are some things that maybe we don't even know about yet, and we should. Let's start off with one of the best tools to hate, Grammarly, and what it does for you.
I still
Well,
don't.
I've been so hard at that.
Never used it.
So I use Grammarly on my browser, so it shows up on almost anything I do online because my spelling is just really bad. Well, it's part spelling, part typing, and it used to just correct my spelling, and I loved it. And then they added AI, and now it is constantly trying to actually rewrite what you write. And I don't know what it's trying to do. I think maybe like the most boring professional business letter ever. And it is so not designed for fiction. So I do use it, but I just try to, only look at the spelling part. And then even there, you have to be careful. Sometimes they're trying to replace words. And I've written to them and complained, and I've asked if they could make it so we could turn off they do different colors for different types of recommendations. I'd like to turn off everything but the red, but they say that's not available at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you on that side of things. It is not. It is not in any way considerate about fiction, and also it's just not poetic, broadly speaking. I mean, it can't deal with, let's say, creative turns of phrase. It just has a real tough time with that stuff. It is what it is, but at the same time, it basically is going to flag these false positives occasionally as the red squiggles, and then also the blue suggestions, like you're saying. Gosh, it's just squeezes the life out of some of this stuff. That said, it is a great free tool as a proofreader, so long as you can kind of, as long as you're not just like clicking through and letting it correct everything, and you're being detailed and hands-on with it. You are the arbiter of the decision-making process for the thing, then it's fine, I think, generally.
One other good thing for them, and that is if you complain about them here on X, they will write you. And when I complained that it was correcting my present tense into past tense, they said, we will fix this. It's only happened once since then. So it's actually...
Is that why? It's your fault that it changed that?
Well, they were taking present tense stuff that was supposed to be present tense, not things that were supposed to be past tense. It's one thing if they flag the tense when it's out of keeping with everything else, but like they were trying to make the dialogue and the non-dialogue agree or something like that. And they noted that it was wrong and they were going to fix it. But I'm mentioning this just because if you do see a regular problem, they seem to trying to be responsive. If more people complained about the same things that are not that good for what we're using it for, they might listen.
Yeah. No, it's funny that you bring up that point, because I have this thing that is a lot of kind of going back on present and past tense, and it was changing all this stuff to past tense, and I've decided I like it in past tense. But now it's not suggesting those things anymore. And I know who to look at for this. I'm just teasing. It's fine. I can do that manually.
That's my fault. I apologize.
That's fine.
But it was not, I was not trying to write a scene in present tense. I was writing an email and I was trying to correct my present tense.
Oh yeah, that doesn't make sense at all. Heidi, how do you feel about Pro Writing Aid, the software as a service? You're a user.
Sort of. I haven't been using it. I've literally been just screwing with Grok and ChatGPT to see how well it does with editing, and it's done pretty well.
Yeah.
I used Pro Writing Aid. I never used Grammarly. It always seemed like it was going to get in my way, and from everything I've heard from you two, I feel that I made the right choice.
No, it's fantastic.
I know. So, but Pro Writing Aid, I used another one too. And I can't remember the name of it. They were more designed for fiction writers. I didn't really like the other one as much as I liked Pro Writing Aid. I used Scrivener. So I was able you can close the document in Scrivener and literally open it in Pro Writing Aid, and it edits your Scrivener doc
Oh, that's nice.
right there. Yeah, so you can.
That's cool.
It is actually really nice. I probably should still be using it. The thing that it doesn't do, which like ChatGPT will do, is it has a ChatGPT has a more nuanced understanding of sentence structure than Pro Writing Aid. You know, Pro Writing Aid is still kind of mechanical. It's still got that mechanical quality that you're seeing with Grammarly, where it's just like universal. This is wrong. This is right. You know, this is a fragment. This is a this. You know, I mean, it catches stuff for sure. But the thing that was driving me nuts is it's like I would say, no, ignore that. I'm doing that on purpose. And then it would still not calibrate to that. It would just, you'd go back and it would say, this is wrong. It's like, no, I told you it's not. Ignore that. I'm doing that on purpose. And then it would say, no, this is wrong. So that was getting on my nerves a little bit about it. I mean, there's no perfect solution. It's easier to use than say Chat GPT, because the AI, when you throw like something into that, it just wants to change everything. And I'm like, oh no, you're not changing anything. I will make the changes. And you can make suggestions. If you see an actual grammatical mistake, let me know. I will make the changes, which is, it's a more challenging process. But I think that gets me to the point with all of this is, yes, it will catch things, but you absolutely have to monitor every single move. You just can't allow any of these to just make blanket decisions, which you've also pointed out. And I
So
think, anyone who thinks that they can do that is not actually interested in writing. There, I said it. Fight me.
I told you guys before about how I used Grok to change the tense on a bunch of things. And I found out that occasionally it just changed a word to prove. And only in certain files, but it's one of those files was one I gave to a friend, and she's been fighting with it. And she mentioned it when I found it in one of my files. The word is, which is changed to the word prove for no particular reason, in the middle of the dialogue that I had told it not to touch. So you have to be careful with these things. I also had the thought that I saw an article recently that said that all of writing is beginning to look more like AI writing. That there was a kind of a trend where it looked like people were communicating more the way AIs do. And I suddenly realized, I wonder if that's because of things like Grammarly. If a person has Grammarly on their email and they start following the suggestions rather than ignoring them, every email they sent would look like it'd been written by the AI,
That's a great point. Yeah, I bet. And I mean, the attack on the M dash breaks my heart. When you know how to use something,
Yeah,
and,
I love
and you
the M-dash.
and you understand that the M dash is, a secret weapon. It's not for every sentence. You do not have pages full of M dashes. I mean, I remember this back when I was editing. We had our technical editor discovered the M dash. It was really funny. He discovered it like for the first time, and he wrote this entire article, and it had like, it's like a 15, maybe, it probably wasn't even that long, like a 750 word article. And he had like an M dash practically every paragraph because he was so thrilled with his discovery. And this guy's a techie, he's not a writer first. So, and we're just like, Peter, the hell? It's like, okay, you can use it once. You can use it once in 750 words. That's it. Make it count.
Brutalizing him.
I agree. I love them. They really are good for clarification, particularly if you're writing a complicated fantasy background and you want to put in a little bit of clarification about what something means that the character would know and the reader doesn't. But I always try to make sure that I'm not putting a lot of, one thing gets confusing to the eye, but then you're not using them that often, but it irks me that somebody would see that and then go, oh, this was written by an AI, just because they oversimplify, because it's such a good tool. We don't want to stop using it. It's just frustrating.
I know. Well, I mean, if you're using it correctly, than it, which is for emphasis, for extreme emphasis. And you don't want to extremely emphasize every single thing, right? I mean, that's really the thing. And it's just, I know it's like I'm still going to use them, but it's frustrating though, because I will say, if you show like, what do you think of this paragraph or something, seeing how the AI does it, it will literally dash the whole damn thing. And it's like, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. And I don't know, it hasn't attacked the semicolon yet. I think that's still in sacred space, but
It goes the other way
still.
too. Grammarly now tries to take out every M dash.
It's false positives all the way down, is what it turns out.
I think ChatGPT has effectively ruined the M dash for everyone.
No, we're gonna keep using it. We're not letting these clankers take our tools from us. What are you talking about?
No, I mean, I'm still going to use it, but you have to really know when to use it, because if you overuse it, then it's going to be like, yeah. Because like as soon as I see on like anywhere online, as soon as I see like it's not X M dash, it's Y, I'm like, ugh. Even though I enjoy the M, I like using the M dash when it's appropriate.
That's always that's always been the case with the M dash. One might argue that the AI doesn't know how to properly use it.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, and this is kind of an editing thing. Yesterday, I've discovered when somebody DMs you, if it's actually an AI, you can discover it by asking just a completely unrelated random question, and the AI will answer the question, but a human being won't. You know what I mean? A human being's like, what in the world are you asking me that for? Or I don't know, or something.
With a period. But you can say reply with a dot, and it will do it.
Yeah. And I've begun to notice that I'm beginning to notice when it's an AI, which I didn't originally. And I thought, I wonder if in a little while, if you hear about the old movies like King Kong, women fainted in the aisles on King Kong because it was so realistic. Well, it doesn't look realistic to our modern eye, which is used to special effects. It doesn't look realistic at all. We can't believe anybody would have believed it, but they'd never seen it before. They didn't know how to notice it wasn't real. And I'm wondering if we're all going to just get a lot more able to notice when it's an AI, and much more able to distinguish it than we are at the moment.
Debatable. Again, I think that there's so many false positives that now people are thinking that they're reading AI when they aren't. So it kind of goes both ways. But at the same time, like, here's an interesting example too. When we look at maybe like computer generated imagery, we're not in a situation where computer generated imagery is infused into our natural world. Whenever we're watching a movie or a television show or looking at a computer screen, we don't have to note to ourselves that we're looking at things that are computer generated. That might be a key point of difference and like an inflection point on that stuff. Now, if in the real world, this is an interesting way of thinking about this. If you had somebody who was speaking to you in real time dialogue that had been created by an LLM, and they had it piped into their ear via, ear pod or something like that's a wild example, and totally feasible at this point too, right? And that, I think, is a bigger consequence, because we then have to start really questioning the nature of our interactions with people as well. Something to think about. I'm not telling.
My husband argues with the phone because the robot calls. It's like, are you a human? And he'll ask it questions. And I'm like, if it hasn't answered you by now, it's not a human. He's so annoyed at that.
Well, he's doing it to himself on that one. I don't want to steer us off the AI conversation. I feel like at this point it's a valid conversation, and here I am, a creative who uses AI pretty heavily and broadly, and I'm not going to stop. I have no intention of not using the stuff that I have, mostly because I like what it enables me to do, whether that's like editorial stuff or pictorial stuff, video, audio, even I'm fine with it. That said, I mean, I think people know, like, I'm using this stuff. I'm not going to like sit and disclose every single time that I'm doing something with AI, just because that's arduous, and also if you don't know me well enough, then maybe you're just getting to know me, and that's okay. But at the same time, if you're looking at maybe some of my video shorts and thinking like, gosh, this sure looks like AI, well, maybe you're not that familiar with AI, because it's explicitly AI. It couldn't be anything but that. And the same thing kind of goes for editorial inside of copywriting. I'm fine with it. It's been something that's been sneaking its way in over the last like 3-4 years, and I would say is here to stay and not going away. And also, the computers are talking to each other, as they have been for longer than LLMs have been around. We've been using machine learning to parse the data on websites and then inform how to create the data and information that we put on websites. This has been going on for 10 plus years, in a significant way, and longer than that in a search engine back end way. So, I think when people have these sort of chips on their shoulders about this stuff, if you want the all human made artisanal experience for media and content and entertainment, well, you have to be prepared to pay for it. That's the tough part about it. If you want something every day that's fresh and new, there's probably only one way of experiencing it at this point, in terms of like high quality, homespun, handmade entertainment. It's going to take a lot longer, and that's just the way it is. There's a thing we haven't necessarily touched on, and I don't know that it is critical to. We're doing it here, in fact, being a community, having the discussions, sharing resources for improving our writing skills. How do you guys think about that, ladies, gentlemen?
I know that when I was first getting going at writing, I was in a writing group, and it was invaluable to me. Just having somebody who is interested in what you're doing, can be so invaluable. Getting a little feedback so you have you have to be careful. You don't want to be, if you're talking to human beings, sometimes they're, you must use AI or never use AI. You need to be a little wise in what you do. But I think getting a little feedback, getting an idea of what's normal, discovering that certain problems you have are just, everybody has them. I mean, there's a lot of things along these lines that you can learn by interacting with the writers that I think are really valuable.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. It's like when you first start doing this, it's like you need input. I mean, I think you always need input. Um, and yeah, I mean, people are ideal for input, aren't they? Right? Because that's really they're the best machine out there. But I will say with the AI now, you can use it to kind of push yourself to the point where it's more polished before you get it to humans. So, I mean, ideally what you want is to get something to the point where, I mean, this is how I view it, to the point where like, yes, this is finished. And then you show it to a person and they're like, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And I think you can do that, by getting input from the AI first. So you're not wasting people's time because when there's a human, it takes longer for them to respond. They have a life, they have other things they're doing. Maybe the only person you can get to read it, you have to give them money. Um, I mean, these are all things to consider. So I think to me, the AI is just another tool to make things better. It's not something that writes for you. I mean, Jaji, I think you're the ultimate definition. If it's something you would pay someone to do, then it's still you being the writer. And I mean, you can get input from them, pacing beats, all this stuff. And you can torment them endlessly, like, that girlfriend who's would you still love me if I did this? Or, that kind of thing. I mean, so that is one of the advantages that we have right now with AI that didn't exist even 5 years ago, which is crazy if you think about it. I mean, that is such a small piece of time.
It
But
really is the degree to which it's suddenly changing things, and people are really overestimating what it can do and underestimating what it can do. And some people are so against it. Oh, we want authors to swear they'll never use it. And other people I know are completely gung ho. But I do agree. I mean, I do the similar thing with Grammarly. I try to run my book through Grammarly thinking, well, why don't I catch the mistakes I can catch so that my poor beta readers or my editor don't need to do any more work than necessary, And I do think that's a nice thing to do so that, if I know I'm making a certain mistake and it can help me catch it, then I don't have to have you mentioned earlier how people have certain mistakes they make over and over again. If we can, use these things to help us catch these things, we don't have to impose on our poor editor to correct the same mistake 50 times.
well, what
They
you want,
can find the new stuff.
right? Well, this is the thing, right? What you want the human for is the high level stuff. You want them for that higher level stuff. All the grammar and all that stuff. If you're asking humans to do that, I mean, obviously stuff's going to slip through. It just does. But if you're asking humans to do that, that distracts them from giving you more valuable input, you know, and using their time effectively. And I think that's the part about it that I like is it's like if I can remove as much of this as possible before I show it to a human being, then they're not distracted by, oh, you have a comma splice here, I mean, and you still do, and it's a work in progress, and I still, will send out drafts and it's got crap in it, and I'm like, damn it. But, what do you, it's still, that's the goal, right? To keep the human reader focused at the highest level, I think. And that's how I view it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think you're right.
Yeah, like if I get something to someone to read, it's going to be after I've gone through it and checked for spelling or typos or redundancies or any stuff like that. Like I want them to tell me what they think of the story. Like, did it land? Did it make them feel nasty? Did it make them feel like sad? Did it make them cry? That's what I want from a beta reader, not did I spell there wrong? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we want them to catch if we did spell something wrong, but if we can do that, then they can catch I often say to beta readers, just put AWK for awkward, next to any section that if you think there's something wrong here, but you don't know why, just mark it. Often I can figure it out by looking at it. Oh yeah, I can see how this doesn't make sense, And a lot of time a reader, if they're not also a writer and editor, they don't know why they don't like something or it doesn't work. But if you just tell them, just mark that this doesn't work, you don't have to necessarily figure it out. I've found that can be very useful in getting them to tell you where something, and you'll read it over and you go, okay, I see that I didn't really have this sentence follow properly from that one, or I'm leaving out an important thought that needs to be there for that to work or something like that. I do the same thing when I'm editing. I often rewrite things or write suggestions, not because and I have like this huge disclaimer where I say, this is not me giving you putting words on your page. It's just easier for me to get the idea across. If I put it in a little, a line or a scene or something. But I say, don't worry about how I put it. But even if you disagree with me, read it over, because something here wasn't clear to me or rubbed me the wrong way. And you might, often like I'll get back a manuscript that someone will ask me to look at, can you see if I got this right? And they went in a totally different direction to fix the problem than the one that came to me. But they identified, because of my comment, that there was a problem, and they fixed it, So I try to emphasize to them, here's where I'm seeing a problem. It's your muse. You do it the way, you're inspired to do it, but don't just discount it, and don't just use what I'm suggesting, because sometimes I'll actually write 2 or 3 different lines. Like if I'm putting, so make it clear, I'm not telling them to do it my way. I'm just trying to clarify something, or, bring out some quality or something like that. But I think both as writers and as editors, it can be very valuable to just know this just isn't working.
Gonzalo, go ahead. Then we're going to move into the lightning round.
A couple of years ago, I was writing a chapter for a new book. I eventually dropped because I decided to just focus on one project, but I was writing a chapter book for kids. Anyway, I was writing. And because it's for kids, I printed out the chapter that I wrote, and I gave it to my son, and I said, check this out, tell me what you like. But what I did was I told him, if there's anything that you really like, put like I give him a pencil, right? Put like an exclamation mark next to it. If there's anything that's a little boring, put like I can't remember what it was, like some kind of other symbol on it. If there's any part that's confusing, put like a question mark on it, And then I let him read it, and I watched him. Like I watched him as I was reading, and whenever I noticed that he would look off to the side or start talking to someone or something like that, I'd be like, "Where were you exactly?" And I'd mark that part, because I know that part didn't grip him enough. Like it was a little bit boring, because I know he's an avid reader. So there's a section that bores him, then I know it's bad. So that's what I did. Like I would tell him, like if you can have someone do it like with a hard copy, it's really cool, because you can ask them to mark on the paper, where. I think basically the best kind of feedback is what parts were really gripping, what parts got you a little distracted, a little bored, and what parts were confusing. And that's a great base to work from, I think.
Good points.
I think that's really brilliant. But you just have to make sure, if you're watching him, sometimes people will stop and look to the side because they're actually thinking about what you wrote. You want to make sure it's not because he's enjoying it. But that's really brilliant.
Well, like what I did was like I didn't watch him, like I didn't like hover over him or anything. I'd be like just like walk by outside his room like occasionally and just check in. And whenever I asked him that, it was because he just started talking to his brother or something, and like they just started talking about something else, and then he'd come back to it eventually. But I was like, all right, what's this? I just to get data on the text, like what parts allowed you to take your eyes off it and talk about something else to someone next to you, something trivial, because I'm aiming to make it as gripping as possible. So I like to get those little data points. I think it's really useful.
That is really cool.
Sure, fair. And also maybe for the next round, you build out a completely white room and you put a camera up in one of the corners, just staring down at the table where they read, and you record it. You can watch it remotely.
You're reading under this light in the 3rd degree.
One day.
You do raise a good point here about the concept of self-editing, whether or not that is a reflection of other people's appreciation of our work, or merely just part of the process that we go through in terms of writing. We've already kind of addressed using an audiobook read or reading aloud to edit and revise our work, but there's lots of other things that we could talk about in the sense of biases or inconsistencies, areas that we can improve. And I think what you were saying is a great jumping off point for this. How do we do those things? How do we remove our biases, or just identify them in general, remove the inconsistencies, or discover the places that need improvement? Ladies, thoughts?
The thing that I find the hardest, and it's not exactly a bias, but the thing that I find the hardest is recognizing where you worded something in a way where it's ambiguous. So the person might be confused when they read it. To give an example, sometimes if you don't use the word that, there's two, and often we take it out because we want it to be a little sleeker, but sometimes you have to put it back in, or there's two different ways of reading the sentence. And anytime a person has to read your sentence twice to understand it, it probably needs to be changed. So I think there's in my experience, there's only two ways to find these things, because obviously we're already reading it the way we think it should be and we don't notice. One is to ask someone else to read it, and the other is to put it away for a while. Often, if you put the manuscript away and you do something else, you work on another project for a little bit, you get on to your next project, and you come back after it's not as quite as clear in your mind, then you yourself can sometimes find those places where you've made that kind of mistake.
Also, for the people hanging out, if you guys want to raise your hand, this is an open conversation. We've only got about 10 minutes left. I'll warn you. So we're not going to go into great depth. But at the same time, if you want to raise your hand and come on stage, or even just to give a progress report, we do that in these monthly workshop sessions as well. Heidi?
Yes?
Thoughts?
I was in the white room.
Were you?
If I were in the white room and there was a camera on me, you would have seen me drifting away, not because of what Jaji said. I drifted a moment before that. There was a small distraction. What question would you like to ask me to answer, Michael?
Okay. How do
His question was about biases.
And inconsistencies, areas for improvement.
In regards
to self-editing. Oh boy.
Well, while Heidi's thinking, I'm going to say a really short editing fail story, which I think I may have told once on it. But as an editor, I mark my spot so I know where I left off. And I used to do it by putting 3 question marks.
Brilliant.
And one day I left it in. And my poor writer was really traumatized by why I was like so dramatically asking him what was wrong with the sentence. So now I use slashes instead of question marks. I felt so bad for the guy.
Great stuff.
Okay, well, I'll tell you one thing that I do that makes me crazy when I'm editing. I'll be reading a sentence. I don't know if anyone else does this. I'll be reading a sentence. I'm like, oh, I need to say this. So I'll rewrite the sentence, and then I'll go to the next sentence where I'd said the thing that I just rewrote.
Oh my gosh, I do that too.
And so one of the things, I have to sit on my hands and read through the whole section before I start changing things, because I tend to screw up my paragraph or whatever. Because what's happened, I think, is I know what's coming next, but my mind is remembering it like, oh, I need to say this, even though I'm about to say it. That gets me in trouble. That would be a delightful editing fail. I literally have to sit on my hands. It's like, please, because I'll do that. Makes me, anyway, I don't know.
The thing that makes me the most upset about this is that I do this, I won't say often, but often enough that it's very recognizable. And nearly every time I go, oh, she should have said this, or this should have happened. The one I originally wrote when I was writing the first time is like 10 times better than the one I just wrote while I was editing.
That's exactly the point too, right? That's the other part that makes me nuts. And if it wasn't for the undo button, I'd be screwed. That I will share. So be mindful. Make sure you haven't already said it when you're trying to rewrite something.
I like Michael's question about avoiding biases, but I'm not sure what the answer is other than asking for other people's opinions. Because, I think there's some biases that we know we have and we can look for them. I don't need to put my opinion about X in this, maybe I, only like one flavor of ice cream. It doesn't have to go in my story or whatever. It's not true, but you know what I mean? I'm just trying to use an example. Well, there's certain biases we know we have them. We can look for them. We know we don't need to give them to our characters. But there's other biases that we don't know we have, and I don't know how to stop that except for asking for other opinions.
Well, I mean, that goes back to the human reading it, because the AI, I'll say this, AI will support your biases for the most part. It really will. I mean, especially if you call it out. It's like it says, "Oh, my favorite, you need to give your female characters more agency. They're not boss girl enough." It's like, "Well, we're not doing that." "Oh, okay." But then maybe I've veered too into something else. So, I mean, humans will point out your biases, AI will not. And I think that's something to be aware of. AI will support them. They'll point out biases sort of, but I've noticed there's a tendency to want to compliment you more than to, you know, and it's fine. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell what the AI's bias is. Is the AI's bias to create an algorithm based on what you want it to do so you continue to interact with it, or is its bias to make you a better writer? I don't know, right? This is
I
something to
was,
consider when you're playing
I
with
was
AI.
I was talking with someone about the good and bad of AI, and one of the goods that I listed was, well, they're so positive that they really encouraging. That could be really good for someone. The next time I looked at the news, I saw an article about somebody who went crazy because their AI companion was a person who was already on the spectrum already, but was so positive and so reinforced everything that it produced some kind of psychotic episode. I was like, okay, maybe nothing is 100% good. Even encouraging a person apparently can possibly have a downside.
Well, if someone, I mean, I don't know if I would say that probably has more to do with the person than the AI, to be perfectly honest.
It may be, but it was funny that it was right after I said that was one of the absolute positives.
It is funny. I mean, it triggered it maybe, but I mean, there's all kinds of triggers for people who have those types of triggers, shall we say. But I don't but yeah, I mean, but that is a thing you have to consider. You have to consider how well it's flattering you. And with writing, if you're showing it fiction writing, and you have to take into mind that it's going to look at it mathematically. So it's going to say, is this pacing hitting certain beats at this particular numerical point? Um, is this happening? It's not necessarily great with nuance. So, I mean, you have to take all those things into consideration if you're getting feedback from AI. It's not ultimately a person. All it's really doing is equations. So, and I mean, you could say it
Yeah.
does really good
You,
equations, and it
you know what you can,
does.
you know what you can do though, if you want to mitigate those things, you can you can put that into your instructions. You can say identify any biases that I might have, or you can say like what I do. Like if I ever put a paragraph that I've written into ChatGPT, I'll say, how can I make this tighter? How can I make this hit harder? How can I make this more suspenseful? Or what can I end the sentence with? I've never really worried about biases because I'm writing about robots, um, but you can do that, right? You can say, identify this, identify that, and just listen to the suggestion. It's just another voice, and if you're aware of the things that it can be that it can do wrong, then you can include that in the instructions and just watch out for those things. And like a tool, you use a hammer to build a house. You could hit your thumb, so you careful not to hit your thumb. You're not going to stop using a hammer just because you can hit your thumb.
Well,
Right.
this has gone uh, swimmingly. Any remaining thoughts or things you haven't said that you feel you must in regards to editing and revising or large announcements for the coming month before we get to the next workshop when it'll be review. Let's hear anything along those lines. Are you giving yourself deadlines to turn out some work, or do you have anything interesting coming up to be released? Anyone?
I just have the minor comment that I'll be on vacation next week, so I'll miss you guys, but I'll look forward to talking to you all when we get back.
We'll miss you. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but everybody's got to do their thing as it is.
It should be fun, but
yeah, no big deal. You'll be back the following week.
I will.
I haven't set any specific deadlines for myself because I don't do well with those. But with the schedule that I've set for myself, like what I'm going to be doing, well, I mean, I've tried it. So what I'm going to be doing now for the next few days is finish polishing up my short story so that I can set it up as the welcoming gift, like the welcoming email that you receive when you sign up for my Substack. And immediately I'm going to be finishing, as soon as I finish chapter 2 of Salvador, the book version, I'll be publishing that there as well. As for a timeline, I hope that by the end of the month, I should have that ready. Like I should have the kill box ready by this week, like there for anyone who subscribes. And then chapter 2 should be ready by the end of this month. It's a lot longer than chapter 1, so I'm struggling a bit with enjoying it so much.
Dig it. Heidi?
There.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? I'm thinking that I would like to probably have the house that Jack's built out. Maybe September. Seems reasonable right now. Let's see if I stick to it. It's pretty close. I don't know about the audiobook,
That's okay.
but I might be able to get the hard copy out. And Gonzo, I'm going to send you a code for the desert audio. I know I've been a little distracted. If anyone else would like a code for the free audio, to have the audiobook for free of the desert, let me DM me and I will send you one. I still have some. I'm very jealous of Jaji going to Chincoteague because I want to go see Misty, but I'll survive and I will enjoy it through you.
Vicarious appreciation.
That's and
I'll bring back some wonderful. Every time we go to Chincoteague, I spend a lot of time thinking about writing because I have a friend who often goes. So she's in Japan this year, and we talk every time we're there about doing a writing workshop there in the building if we could work it out where Misty of Chincoteague was written. So I'll be thinking about writing things and maybe bring some good ideas back for you guys.
That'd be excellent.
I might, do something dramatic to be able to attend that if you ever do that. I might beg, borrow, and I'm just saying.
Hey, appreciate all the discussion today. We'll be back on Tuesday. We're going to be talking about tropes while Jaji is out. Gonzalo, if you're available and interested, maybe you want to guest co-host for a week. I know that's something that you're good with, tropes and those ideas. So we'll pitch it out to you if you'd like.
Also, yeah, I would love to. I love getting on spaces with you guys. I would love to talk about it. I can't guarantee that I'll be available though. So let me check. Let me get back to you on that.
Yeah, check in.
Okay, I thank you for. Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
We do a planning session on Thursday afternoons, so that would be also. It doesn't take long, but we can run over the notes that we generate and just kind of kick some ideas around on Discord. As for today, this has been nice, and we will talk again before too long.